Hi, and welcome to Get Curious with Kirsten, where we talk about the intersection of curiosity and leadership. Last week, we discussed the importance of staying curious during our conversations. We all have to focus on overriding our brain's natural mode of listening, in which we are just preparing our own response, and truly listening to understand what that other person's communicating to us. And this requires a whole different level of attention and intention in that moment. It's a conscious choice we make to really listen. Now, while it can be enjoyable to listen when another person is telling us a story or sharing something that they're excited about, it can be a lot more challenging to listen when that person is highly emotionally charged, especially when it's something we consider to be a negative emotion, like they're agitated, angry, or maybe they're like emotionally explosive. When we're around people who are communicating strong emotions, it can trigger our fight, flight, or freeze response that happens in the back of our brains, the amygdala. But we can override that if we stay calm, acknowledge the emotion, and ask a question. So first, it's important to stay calm and to not get triggered emotionally. Remember that their display of emotion is all about what's going on for them. So the first thing that I think of when someone comes at me with a lot of emotion is, I wonder what's happening for them right now. By getting curious, it helps me to shift out of that fight, flight, or freeze and move into the logical, rational part of my brain, at the front of my brain, which is where the reasoning and decision making happens. And for more tips about how to stay calm in these situations, I've included a link that's got some great resources for you. The next step is to acknowledge that person's feelings. It helps that person to feel validated, heard, and seen. When I acknowledge someone, I'm not making a judgment about what they're feeling. I'm also not agreeing with their feelings or their point of view. They're simply feelings. But I am acknowledging the emotion and that it's real for them in that moment. So some examples of acknowledging a person's emotions might be, that sounds challenging. That can be frustrating. I can hear how humiliating this is for you. I can see that you're disappointed. So note that acknowledging the emotion is different than paraphrasing, which is another form of acknowledgement, but has to do more with restating the person's idea or content. Paraphrasing can be helpful in a scenario that's not highly emotionally charged, like you're in a brainstorming meeting at work. But it's not so helpful when someone's coming at you with a freight train of emotion. So finally, you'll want to ask a question that gets at the heart of what they're trying to communicate and help them to share what's happening internally for them in that moment. Aren't you curious about what got them agitated or upset in the first place? I am. So here are some potential questions that you can use to help ground them in their own experience without judgment. You could ask, what's happening for you right now? What's the hardest part of this for you? That's a great focusing question. How do you feel about this? It's very general, but helps them focus on their feelings. Or you could say, tell me more about what's going on. And that gives them permission to talk more about their experience or the situation they find themselves in. We generally want to ask open-ended questions here, start with what or how. We want to avoid the use of the word why, because that makes a person defend or justify their position rather than help them explore their feelings. So I'd like to leave you with a quote from the Dalai Lama, who said, "When you talk, you're only repeating what you know, but if you listen, you may learn something new." Until next time, stay curious.